a Washington Wizard, and the Wizards believe that this is the next step in their development process. Obviously, this is a team that's been in a rebuild.
I know that the Hawks are freeing up a lot of cap space. Doesn't feel like they got enough in return for a four-time All-Star and a guy who plays at that level.
For Trae Young, he get a fresh start. I don't know too much about competing for a championship, but he damn sure.
Where Trae Young goes from Atlanta to Washington in exchange for the best player in Lehigh history, C.J. McCollum, and Corey Kispert going to Atlanta. Trae spent 7 years in Atlanta, took them to the playoffs 3 times, Eastern Conference Finals, where he beat the Philadelphia 76ers, got deeper into the playoffs, and Joel Embiid and the Sixers have gotten in that era, Cam and Pat. And now he goes to Washington, where there are 2 interesting storylines with this. Dorky NBA, like inside breaking down the Hawks bench, which I'll do if you want, but I don't think.
I know you're dying to do that.
There's 2 really interesting storylines. One, a player decided to want to go to a bad team. How do you feel about that?
I can't understand why.
So this doesn't even have to be about Trae Young. This is about an all-star caliber player in a sport who's not, at least initially, going to get paid more. Ultimately, he will. But at least initially, not going to get paid more, wanting to go to a bad team. Is that in some ways commendable and like, hey, I'll be the reason that they're good? Or it's he just wants the contract extension long term, and that's the one team because of Travis Schlenk, who was his general manager in Atlanta, who knows him. He's the guy who's going to give him that. How do you feel about that?
Well, let me answer your question with a question. Mm-hmm. If you were in that position, would you think you were going there to be a cornerstone piece of a turnaround and something that they would build around? Would you have confidence in that organization that they were able to do that?
No, but I would have confidence in me because I've done it before. And a perfect way of asking that question in return, because it leads me into the second part of this. Okay. The second part of it is a Nuno thought. The first part, Jovante, one of our producers, Jovante is fascinated by that and presented that as a topic. Like the idea of like, this is a good player, theoretically, wanting to go to a bad team on purpose. That's unique in itself. And not for, they offered me the most amount of money immediately. They're going to give him more money than anybody else long term. The second part is Nuno is fascinated by the idea of a fall from grace with Trae Young. Now, I think what's interesting about a fall from grace is when you talk about an athlete, this is an on-court part of it or on-field part of it, on ice, whatever it is. A fall from grace would indicate grace. And I think that has to be pointed out. The reason that I would say, yeah, I believe I could turn this thing around is because I've done it before. Mm-hmm. Trae Young had a period of grace where he was the guy. Yeah. He led them to an Eastern Conference Finals. Do you remember the matchup with the Knicks? Trae is balding. Like, everybody thought that, those are the fans, that's not my words. The fans were cheering that at him. And everybody thought, okay, this could be potentially the next Reggie Miller. This could be the next villain. This could be a guy that takes on this big city in New York, and he could be that guy. And now he was traded for CJ, who's a wonderful guy. We got to know him when he's been here at ESPN, and he's had a great career, final year of his contract, a veteran player. But it's an expiring contract. And Corey Kispert is a former lottery pick who's a role player at best. That is transactionally a fall from grace. At one point, you remember Luka was traded for Trae in the draft night trade? We made the argument and we had the conversation, hey, is there a chance Atlanta, team-wise, won the deal? Not player-wise, but Atlanta got deeper into the playoffs than Dallas did at one before Dallas got to the finals. And so, is it a fall from grace? I don't know that I look at it that way, but I think it's, in a way, it's a compliment because it acknowledges that there was grace with Trae Young.
Well, he departs as the Hawks franchise all-time leader in assists, 3-point field goals. He ranks 6th in points, and he has the highest scoring average in Hawks playoff history, 26.4 points per game in 27 games. So there's certainly that grace that you're talking about. He made a huge impact on that organization. But moving him is obviously opening a window for a new era in Atlanta. They have added financial flexibility. They're going to make some moves. So they're saying, we are positioning ourselves to be better, and we think we're going to be better if we move on from you, indicating a fall from grace.
Yeah, when I hear fall from grace that Nuno brings up, a lot of times I think about off the field stuff, or off the court. There's nothing like that, right? Obviously. With Trae, that's not what this is. You could also look at a guy at the end of his career, Aaron Rodgers, who obviously now we don't look at it that way. He's in the postseason Monday night here on ESPN against the Texans.
And it matters with Rodgers because he did it with the Steelers. That matters way more.
Well, it's funny. I was going to bring up another quarterback, Russell Wilson. People look at Russell Wilson was awful in Denver, and the time with the Giants now is probably coming to an end and got benched. But Russell Wilson did go to the playoffs with the Steelers last year. Like, I don't know, like that. Trae Young, I guess, Nuno, make your point deeper here on the Trae Young fall from grace angle, because I don't know that people acknowledge the grace part of the fall.
Well, for me, it's you went back to that 21 playoff run, right? I'm a Knicks fan. It's the hate. This is our new Reggie Miller. This is the new guy that's doing things similar to what Steph is doing. We expected him to be like one of the new superstars in this league, and it just never happened. It just became where, I don't know if it's injuries, it was the way that team just didn't they started trading players and things of that nature and just didn't have the team success. But it just felt that this was going to be one of the next faces of the league. Yeah, and I guess the fall for grace, as you're saying, Ja Morant feels like the fall for grace. Because there's all the off-court, the Zion, because he's not been healthy like that.
Well, there's an off-court there, not trouble, but the weight clause and all that kind of stuff, right? There's stuff with that. But I think it's tricky when you're thinking about fall from grace. But I can tell you this, just last thing for now on the Trae Young. Blindly, would it surprise you if he led the league in scoring next year? Not this year, because he's banged up and he's probably not going to play a ton this year. But next year, blindly on a kind of ant team, guy could lead the league in scoring next year and assists. It's not off the table. And so I would take the overs on whatever the scoring and assist numbers are next year. I don't know that I would take the over on the wins necessarily in Washington. We are unsportsmanlike.
Trae is on the move. Trae Young has been traded to the Wizards for C.J. McCollum. Corey Kispert, sources told ESPN. Young set out the Hawks game tonight against the Pelicans. During the game, he was dapping up friends, waving to fans, four-time All-Star. Young has been the face of the franchise in his 7+ seasons in the ATL. We bring in Shams Charania for more on this. Huge news, though not entirely unexpected. So, Shams, what more can you tell us about how this move went down?
Ryan, the Wizards believe they're taking a low-risk swing at a player that's shown prowess throughout the NBA. They believe that Trae Young can be the anchor for this young, burgeoning, talented team in the nation's capital. And we've seen the Wizards have been in a rebuild over the last few years, but now they're going to have Trae Young as a young star, as now the face of their young rebuild. And they're also going to have $46 million in cap space in the summer to add to talent around Trae Young. And so how did this even get to this point where Trae Young is on the move and wanting to go to a place like the Wizards? He is extension eligible, and so securing where that future stands became paramount for him, especially after the offseason when the Atlanta Hawks declined to offer an extension. So he will have a $49 million player option in the offseason. We'll see what happens there for an extension, but he will state his case for a long-term future now with the Wizards.
Washington was looking for that big name to bring in with that young team. Now they got Trae. So it's a big chip move for the Hawks. Is Atlanta gearing up for another move?
Ryan, this trade now sets up the Hawks with additional financial flexibility to go out and swing for a high-priced, big salary player, potentially, namely, Dallas Mavericks star Anthony Davis. The Hawks will pursue Davis the second half of the season ahead of the February trade deadline. The Mavericks will talk to several teams, but the Hawks have been at the forefront of interested parties, along with the Toronto Raptors, for the perennial all-star big man. But in the immediate future, the Hawks are turning their core over to Jalen Johnson and other players such as Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels. And they believe C.J. McCollum also fits as a plug-and-play player, a floor spacer, and then you also have Corey Kispert as a sharpshooter on the wing.
They got a lot of pieces there in Atlanta. We'll see if they can build on that, maybe add an AD, someone like that. Atlanta could be on the move. All right, Shams, at the very latest on Trae Young, no longer a Hawk, now a Wizard. Thanks, Shams.
All right, now this was the team that Big Perk saw as a phenomenal fit for the four-time All-Star Trae Young. He joins us now on SportsCenter. So outside of I told y'all, Perk, what's your reaction to the move?
Hey, look, listen. Let me say this. Trae Young jersey is going to be in the Raptors when you think about what he has done in Atlanta. We're talking about a guy over his career that averaged 25 and 11. Now, with that being said, the Hawks made the right move. They got a young up-and-coming star in Jalen Johnson, who is now their franchise player, who's going to be the face of their franchise for a long time. But make no mistake about it, Trae Young in the Washington Wizards uniform, scratching the surface of his prime, he's going to do wonders. He's going to put butts in seats. He's going to put up numbers. He's going to have the keys to the vehicle, and he's going to make people around him better. And if I'm Trae Young, I actually walk into Washington with a chip on my shoulder. The simple fact that Washington got him without having to give up any draft picks, I would take that as a sign of disrespect. I think Trae Young is going to go out there and do well. I can't wait to see him, and I also can't wait to see the new-look Hawks when you talk about Jalen Johnson leading the charge.
No question. I covered the Hawks for about 4 years down there in Atlanta, and every night that Trae Young suited up, you could guarantee it was an event. Thankful for his time down there. Perk, thankful for you, but don't go nowhere. Got to holler at you about some actual hoops here in just a moment. But more on Trae Young. There's no doubt that Trae is one of the best creators the league has ever seen. He scored or assisted on over 48 points per game in his career. That's the second highest average in NBA history, behind, of course, Luka Doncic, who he was traded with on draft night. Young's first game against his former squad will be in Atlanta on February 24th.